Waterloop.
Welcome to Waterloop, the podcast that explores solutions for sustainability and equity in water. I'm the host, Travis Loop. This is episode number 199. Cheers to on-site reuse. There is tremendous potential in on-site reuse, where a building's greywater, wastewater, or stormwater is treated and used again at the same location. To raise awareness of this technology, a beer was brewed using water recycled by an on-site system at a San Francisco apartment building. The OneWater Brew and concept of on-site reuse are discussed in this episode with Aaron Tartakovsky, CEO of Epic Cleantec. Aaron explains the process of creating the beer and the media attention it has garnered. He also discusses efforts to increase acceptance of on-site reuse among regulators, builders, utilities, and the public. Before starting, I want to tell you about this episode's sponsor, Flume Utility and Business Solutions. I have a Flume system at my house to track water use in real time and show me what's happening on my smartphone. Flume also provides crucial insights to water providers and state and regional planning agencies, enabling them to conserve water, stop leaks, plan for the future, comply with regulations, and so much more. Flume is partnering with leading water utilities across the country, such as the San Antonio Water System, Orange County Municipal Water District, and East Bay Municipal Utilities District. Flume's nationwide network of sensors collect residential water use data at 5-second intervals. It provides detailed analysis of how water is used indoors and out, even down to the fixture level. To learn more, visit flumewater.com and please reach out to their team at partnerships@flumewater.com.
You're in the Waterloop.
Aaron, glad to have you on. Basically, as you know, this episode is all about drinking a beer made with recycled water, recycled wastewater of some kinds, and talking about water issues. So super excited for this episode to have a beer by you and your company, the Epic OneWater Brew and Kolsch-styled ale made with purified recycled water. So I'm going to open mine over here.
I'm going to do the same.
I actually brought a little special, since this is a Kolsch, which is a German-inspired beer. I actually brought a real Stein that I bought in Germany. Gonna just pour your beer into that guy.
You know, we just had we had a visitor to Epic recently who his wife is from Germany. She's from Cologne, where the quote Kolsch originated, and he came with an actual Kolsch glass that he brought to the office and basically made us embarrassed that we're serving this beer in the wrong glasses. I'm just using a standard kitchen glass here, so for any Cologne purists, my apologies.
That's awesome that somebody brought that to you. Yeah, absolutely. But I will say this is not my first time tasting it. Anybody might have seen on social media that you sent me some of this, and I definitely tried one right away. Look at it; it's beautiful stuff. So Aaron, cheers to you and your beer you've made here. It's good. And a podcast when you can sit and drink a beer and talk to a water friend is a good day.
You know, very, very few people would be able to convince me to drink a beer in the middle of the day during the work week. But Travis, you have that power.
I love it. And in all fairness, I'm on the East Coast. It is after 5:00 here, but you're doing the tough work of an entrepreneur and drinking beer in the middle of the day. So before we kind of dive into some water issues, can you tell me and tell folks that are listening about this beer?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think just for some context, Epic Cleantec as a company, we deploy on-site water reuse systems into real estate. So whether that's, a single individual high-rise building in downtown San Francisco, at the district scale, community scale, so a group of buildings, that's our core business. We are not beer makers.
Important clarification there. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. And I only say that because there's been a lot of people reaching out to come visit our brewery and they've been very disappointed to find out that we are not a brewery, but I'll talk more about that. But we really wanted to just find an interesting way to showcase the efficacy of water reuse technologies. And I think there's just an innate misunderstanding, discomfort, yuck factor around these topics. So we thought, look, what better way to really highlight how robust these technologies are than to turn it into something that we drink. We can tell people all day the science is there, the technology is there, but it's a lot more effective to say, look, the water is so clean that we were actually able to put it into a beer. It's perfectly safe, and also it's delicious. So this beer actually came from highly purified water from a greywater system in a 40-story high-rise. So right in the middle of downtown San Francisco, we collected water, treated water from showers, from laundry, from bathroom sinks, put it through an advanced treatment process, transported that water to a local brewery, and then they did their magic, and the result.
Yeah. I am just generally a craft beer fan anyway, and then I'm especially a fan of this whole beer made with recycled wastewater effort. And I do have to show that I'm wearing the Pure Water Brewing Alliance T-shirt for this episode. And we all in that alliance have been thrilled to see your efforts and all the awesome attention you're getting. And like, legitimately, this is a delicious beer. It's so good. I do like the Kolsch style, and you guys nailed it. And congrats on all the media coverage. It's been blowing up. What's the biggest media moment that you've had with this?
Oh man, it's very. Look, we knew it was going to generate some attention, but we certainly did not anticipate the type of attention that this garnered. And I think to date, I mean, we're creeping up on 2 billion media impressions since November. Actually, later, because we didn't really publicize it until this year. But I'd say one of the most special moments was on CBS on their morning show. One of the hosts of that show, Nate Burleson, who's, a lot of folks will recognize him from football commentary. He got excited, and they were sort of talking about the beer live on. Well, let me rephrase that. We heard them talking about the beer, and then this was in a previous episode, and we said, you can't just talk about a beer. We got to try the beer. So we worked all these angles. We got in touch with the producers, ended up sending out a shipment of the beer, and the co-host actually drank the beer live on camera. So Nate Burleson, one of the prominent hosts there, actually chugged an entire Epic OneWater Brew live on TV. And that was one of those moments where I remember the team, we were messaging each other and just saying, well, that was fun. There's our viral moment. So yeah, I'd say that's definitely at the top of the list.
What I really want to talk to you a lot about today over this beer is water reuse and how to get it happening on a faster pace, larger scale, right? This is something that frustrates me. We've got these serious water scarcity issues in the American West, around the world, but I really look domestically, and I see projects popping up, but I'm like, why are cities, utilities not just going full bore? Because you've got the technology. It's so proven. The water is clean. It's safe. And you've got companies like yours that are out there with a solution. And so it's frustrating that I just don't see this stuff going quicker. Why do you think that is? That's a big question. And there's some avenues I want to go down. But why do you think that it's not speeding up and happening on a wider scale?
Yeah, it's a great question. And look, it's something we grapple with all the time as a company. I like that you're talking about sort of accelerating it, because we, as you noted, we have the technologies to do this. I like to tell the story. My co-founder / father, Igor, was trained in the space program. And as he often says, what do you think the astronauts are drinking in space? We know we've had the technologies for a very long time. So I think the real challenges kind of distill down to a few key areas, and happy to go into more on all of these. But one is regulations. We have regulators who very rightly are trying to protect public health. And we have designed our water and wastewater systems a certain way for tens or even hundreds of years, really, if you look at kind of the history of centralized water and wastewater infrastructure. So regulators by nature are risk averse, and that's their job, to protect public health. So some of it is going to be the regulatory side of them kind of coming around to it. But again, we're seeing a lot of really encouraging stuff there. Two is the cost. I think a lot of times these water recycling projects, unlike an app or a piece of software, easier to deploy. Whereas this stuff, it's new technology. A lot of times you're dealing with folks who already have sunk investments into existing infrastructure. So you need to be able to justify the return on the investment of new infrastructure. And then a third and really, really important piece is the public, is the perception of it, is the fact that we have been conditioned as a society for all of our lives to think that water, and specifically wastewater, is something dirty. It is, we literally put waste in the name. We are taught that once you flush the toilet, everything goes off, or not even toilets, just the drains, everything goes off into the sewer, and we don't think about it again. So all of a sudden, when we're telling them, well, actually all of that stuff where we literally call it waste, we're actually going to take, repurpose, and put back into your pipes. Of course, there's going to be some hesitation. There's going to be some opposition to it. But again, this is why we're doing these types of educational campaigns. And I think a lot of things are changing right now. And I think this is kind of this really exciting age of innovation around all things water innovation and water reuse. But if I had to distill it down, it's a combination of regulations, cost, and public perception.
All right. I had a couple of those on my list to dig into further. The regulations thing is interesting to me. Public health protection, first and foremost. I get that. That's what it's all about. But again, the science is there, right? There's been so many studies done on what comes out of the end of these systems that clean, quote, wastewater, right? And so let's get the regulations up to speed with the science that's already out there. I know that it's frustrating that across the US, it's a patchwork of regulations around water reuse, right? Every state kind of has their own take on it. I know EPA has tried, and they're trying to kind of do things with water reuse and push it along, but I'd love to see more on that front too, like the federal government taking even a stronger stance on pushing this forward. You're seeing regulations change in some states though, right? Like they're starting to kind of make room for some of this stuff. You guys follow it even closer than I. What's happening kind of at that state level?
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely seeing a lot more around direct potable reuse, or DPR. I think Colorado is making some great strides. I mean, California even is just released some draft guidelines around direct potable reuse. So again, it's happening. I think there's a lot of momentum. I think the challenge is that these things take time, especially when you're changing regulations, when you're changing laws. There's a lot of stakeholders involved in these decisions, everyone from the public to the regulators, to the public health authorities, the water wastewater utilities, elected officials. I mean, it's complicated stuff. And I think, again, I'm going to make the analogy again that, we're so used to the speed of innovation, especially, where I am, in close to Silicon Valley, where we move fast, we break things. That's kind of the mantra. When you're dealing with really regulatory heavy industries, everything from transportation to medicine to water and wastewater, we have over hundreds of years built safeguards. So for us, we can't just come in and just throw away all of these things that we've developed, again, to protect public health. So it takes time. And again, yeah, it's frustrating because we read the headlines. We're living the headlines. We're seeing storms. I mean, where I am in California now, we have an air quality index over 150 because of fires in Northern California. We're seeing all of these things, and we want to act fast, but it takes time. But again, I am a perpetual optimist. I come from a family of immigrants and refugees to this country, and we came from very difficult circumstances to come to this country. And I think because of that, I've just been conditioned to always kind of look on the bright side. And from my vantage point, just being inundated with updates and new laws and all of the sort of things happening in the water industry, I'm actually extremely energized and encouraged. So I'd say the speed at which things are changing is really picking up now, but yeah, it can be frustrating sometimes, and we experience that all the time. Look, not every city or state that we go to is ready for what we do as a company, but we don't take an adversarial approach. We take an educational, working together approach, and we've seen a lot of success there.
What about the kind of the water utility sector themselves? What's their I know there's a lot of water reuse champions when it comes to big facilities. Maybe when it comes to decentralized treatment, right? There's issues that kind of go up about like, oh, we need this certain amount of flow at our treatment plants. That's what they're designed for. That's how they function. That's how the finances work out. And maybe that's kind of like more of a decentralized issue. What's kind of like the read you get from utilities across the US? And that there's a patchwork there too, like I just said.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And look, a lot has changed since I entered the industry almost 10 years ago. I think when we first started socializing the idea that would become Epic Cleantec, I think there was a lot of resistance for all the reasons that you pointed out, that, that water is our revenue. We need that wastewater to come in. That is our business model as a utility. That is what we are selling. And so there was a lot of resistance, and sometimes there was some pretty outright opposition. I mean, I at a conference once was in an elevator with a utility manager from the Midwest who had just heard my presentation at this conference. We were part of the innovation showcase, and basically, and I'm gonna make his language a little gentler, but he basically said, "You are the jerks who are trying to put us out of business."
Wow.
Now, a lot has changed in that time. I think a lot of people have kind of embraced the fact that decentralized is one of the most promising trends in the industry. And I think what's really important is that there's often this false dichotomy set up of centralized versus decentralized. And we couldn't disagree with that more, because it's not one versus the other. It's the two working in tandem. I often say water right now is kind of having its solar moment, which is to say we are realizing that we can't just rely on large centralized infrastructure. We need decentralized to basically supplement the broader industry. It makes our system stronger. It makes them more resilient, especially in the face of these increasingly frequent extreme weather events. I mean, look at Texas. Look what happened there when you don't have a nice mix of things. And so we still face resistance from it, but I think once we really sit down with utilities, with elected officials, with mayor offices, and we actually show them, look, here are all the different ways that decentralized can actually get you to your, let's say your recycled water goals or your sustainability goals faster. And it's actually going to save you a lot of money, because if you try to build this centralized network and this distribution network, it's going to take you, this many years, it's going to cost this much. We can do that. We can help you get there without digging up streets, without having to put in a lot of horizontal piping. So I think there is no sort of one size fits all solution. It's always going to be distinct to each location, but we've definitely seen a shift. We've seen a shift in kind of the embrace of what it is that we're doing. And again, it's a common theme from me is that from my vantage point, I'm extremely optimistic and encouraged, because there's been a big shift just in the last few years in how people are talking about this.
I should have asked you about this earlier, but decentralized, for people that might not be as familiar with it,
Sure.
What is meant by that, and how are you guys using that? I think it's really interesting. And there's a lot of different ways you can have decentralized water systems, but yeah, I'd love to hear.
Yeah, sure. And I appreciate you stopping me. I think a lot of times we in the industry jump into talking about these things at a deep level without really kind of explaining it. But the conventional approach, or the centralized approach, is what most folks are used to. We have buildings, we have homes, we have industries that are all connected to a central sewer network, hundreds or thousands of miles that wind under our streets and channel all the wastewater to a central treatment facility, and then pump all the potable water back to those buildings. Decentralized means we are existing outside of that conventional approach. So, that could mean anything from septic tanks, which again make up a huge percentage of the United States infrastructure. That is also decentralized. But what we mean is that we are not necessarily reliant on that centralized infrastructure, but we can have a system or a distributed system that is serving a single building. It's serving a community. It's serving a collection of buildings. And so, I think the analogy we often make is on the energy side is that, like a coal plant or nuclear plant, that is centralized energy. It is energy production, then sending it out to everyone else. Decentralized energy or distributed energy would be rooftop solar, or would be a small wind farm or hydropower where it's not necessarily connected to a larger central facility. So that's what we mean when we say decentralized, and we specifically often say on-site. So it's not just decentralized. We're talking about we are on-site collecting the wastewater at the source, treating it, and then reusing it at that same source. So kind of eliminating the need to pump water from one place to the next, often over many miles.
Well, yeah, that was my follow-up question is like, what's the need there for decentralized? What's the value for it? Why should this be part of kind of the portfolio, and why'd you kind of gravitate toward that?
Yeah, let me use San Francisco as kind of a perfect case study to illustrate why. So San Francisco, big well-known city, right in the center of California, which, as many folks know, is sort of hovering in and out of periods of water scarcity, drought, aridification, I should say, whatever term you want to use. San Francisco is planning for the long term. And originally they had plans to do a centralized recycled water capability where they were going to treat the water, recycle it, and then distribute it to all of the buildings in downtown San Francisco, using a network of what we call purple pipes. And for those who aren't familiar, purple pipes, literally colored purple, they designate the international symbol for designating recycled water, just to make sure people aren't connecting drinking water pipes to the recycled water pipes. That was the original plan for San Francisco, to build this centralized infrastructure. And what they realized was that it's not so simple. Not only do you have to treat the water, which again, building that plant is expensive, but then you need to distribute it. And that is actually one of the most difficult things, because when we say distribute the water, it means you need to build pipes that are, again, winding under our streets, getting to each of these buildings. And when we say digging under streets, A, that's really expensive, but B, you're digging up streets, you're messing up people's morning commutes. There's a lot of traffic. Traffic causes all sorts of different economic ramifications. It's kind of this domino effect. So what San Francisco did was they said, well, we are still going to build sort of a centralized recycled water capability for places where it's easier to route that water, let's say to a big public park. But for all of these buildings, rather than us going in and digging up streets, why don't we just have on-site systems that are sort of self-contained, existing in these buildings, aren't going to require all of this extra infrastructure under our streets. And what they found was that they are actually going to be able to get to their recycled water goals faster and cheaper by doing it this way. So again, it's not a replacement of centralized water recycling, but it's the two
complement. It's complementary. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Is San Fran like the place in the country where this is happening, like the most forward leaning on going decentralized?
Yeah. So San Francisco is I think internationally leading on this front. So every new building over 100,000 square feet has to have an on-site water recycling system. And, again, I told you some of the backstory, but it's really simple. And you don't have to be a water expert to understand this. We're coming from drought to drought to drought. There's no reason why we should be taking water from our national parks, our lakes, and our rivers and using that pristine potable water to flush our toilets or water our lawns or do our laundry or cool our buildings. We can be using highly purified recycled water, which, by the way, sometimes even exceeds drinking quality standards, and use that instead. Let's save the pristine drinking water for drinking, and we can use recycled water for all of these applications that don't require drinking water. So that was the motivation behind that regulation. Again, super common sense. And the way we were able to implement it was, again, look, we acknowledge we have the technology. So what were the big blockers? It was the regulations. And if you're a building owner or a developer, there's a lot of complexities in building a new building. So all of a sudden, with no background in water, wastewater, you're going to put one of these systems in. How do we do it? How do you permit it? How do you make sure it runs? And so what San Francisco did was come up with a playbook, literally a step-by-step playbook that says, if you want to do one of these systems, step one, you do a water budget analysis. How much water is the building going to use? How much of a non-potable demand does it have? And then kind of step-by-step bringing in the Department of Public Health, Department of Building Inspection, the water and wastewater utility, and just de-risking the entire process. And that's what enabled this program to really gain traction in San Francisco. So again, San Francisco now has, I think by last count, over 60 projects that are going to be incorporating differing forms of on-site reuse. And that is now becoming a playbook that's being copy-pasted to other cities, states, and actually countries. I mean, just next week, we're hosting a delegation from the government of Germany who's coming to study the models we've developed in San Francisco. And
you got the Kolsch to offer them too. I mean, come on here, that's perfect.
I didn't even connect those.
Look
dots,
at the connection there. They're gonna really freak out for you.
That's right. That's good.
Oh man, I want to talk about the public perspective or the public opinion part of it. With beer made with recycled water, that was the whole point. That was the genesis of it a decade ago up in Oregon. The idea that let's start the conversation with people. Let's try to get them over the yuck factor by explaining look what we can do with technology. I love hearing down in El Paso, Texas, where they're going to be the first to go, direct potable reuse, take it, put it right back in drinking water. It's going to be awesome. I think that because of all the education they've done, I heard Gilbert Trejo down there to say 85+% of their people are bring it on, their customers. They're bring it on, let's go, we're ready, because they've educated them, over time. So that's a point of optimism for this whole water reuse piece. I think LA has got a lot of work ahead of them because they're making a big push on DPR. And I saw something recently around public opinion there too. And I think because of the drought, the aridification, people are it's starting to click for people, which is awesome. Again, that's another reason we make the beer. But what about the decentralized piece? There's tenants in that apartment building, right? Or people that own condos there, whatever it is. What do they say about having this system in where they live?
So I love that question because there is two answers. There's the answer that we often get from building owners and developers who think that their residents or their tenants are going to have big opposition to these systems. And again, that's probably more true a few years ago, but there are projects where that we were involved in that said, we don't know if we want to do on-site water reuse because we're concerned that that's going to threaten our ability to then sell these condos. If these high-end buyers aren't going to want to live in these projects because of the recycled water. Then there's what we've actually found. And what we've found is that people are extremely excited about it. Because, look, I'm going to take the California example again. We live in California. You drive down the highway and you just see signs all over the place saying we're in a drought, conserve water. You go into a restaurant, they're saying we're only giving water if you request it.
Wow.
Maybe without even realizing it, people are just being inundated with, we are in a drought, do more. We even have Steph Curry, from of Warriors fame, who's coming on TV telling people to conserve in the drought. So then it comes to what can people do? And I think a lot of times, whether it's with water or just with climate action in general, a lot of times people feel helpless. What the weather is changing, there are storms and floods, and it's kind of biblical stuff going on. What can I do? And so all of a sudden, when these buildings have these on-site reuse systems, people feel really proud. And we were walking through one of our projects, doing an interview with CNBC, And one of the crew actually stopped a leasing agent from this big building, 550 apartments right in the center of San Francisco. So one of the crew stopped the leasing agent and said, what do you think about the water reuse system? He said, oh, it's great. He said, it's actually one of the top selling points for people to come live in this building. They're super excited about.
Can't wait till there's a system I can put in my single family home, and something like that. I'd love to be able to adopt more of that super forward stuff in my own home. Builders have a huge role in this, right? Yes, the state can permit it and allow it. Yes, you guys can provide the tech, but you got to have builders that are willing to put this in. So what's that process like of educating them and getting them on board?
I mean, you nailed it. It's education. I think the folks we work with, the trades folks, the plumbers, the contractors, the electricians, the developers, the engineers, they're all extremely sophisticated people. Once we do one project with them, they get it. And I think where we are now, sort of in the cycle of things, is we're going through that sort of education ramp up. We've worked with some of the largest building owners, developers, contractors, engineers in the nation. There's some learning curves, there's some bumps along the way, but they get it now. And again, that's going to be true with any industry that's transitioning to doing something new. But people really get it. And I think now it's becoming the goal is to get this to be something that is not just going to be an approach for just super environmentally minded folks who want to incorporate all the sort of the highest levels of sustainability, sustainable practices into these projects. We want to create something that even if someone hates the environmental movement, thinks climate change is a hoax, they're going to do it because it's going to save them money. That's going to be the big driver to do this. And that, in my opinion, is the key to any true sustainability success story, is that it's got to be good for people, it's got to be good for the planet, but also very importantly, it's got to be good for profits. That's what we're trying to unlock. And I think, working with those folks on the education front, I mean, it's part of the reason why we do these kinds of campaigns like the beer campaign, to reach more people more quickly. But a lot of it is just really kind of what I call retail engagement, getting in front of them, delivering presentations. Just a few months ago, got up at 5:30 to go present to, I think, about 400 contractors who meet every Friday in the morning in a hotel ballroom. This is kind of their approach, but just showing them that this is not scary stuff, that this is proven technology. Here's how to build it. And by the way, we have a playbook, and we at Epic have actually developed a playbook that we can give to all these different practitioners that says, here's how to incorporate these systems. Here's all the different ways we coordinate with all the various stakeholders on the project, and it's all easy stuff.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, let's finish where we started with the beer. You've been talking so much that I feel like you haven't been able to drink as much as I have of your beverage there.
Okay,
but it's really awesome. I shout out, I don't know if you said it already, I think you did, Devil's Canyon Brewing Company in San Carlos, California. So shout out to those guys for making just an awesome beer. I know Kolsch and the lighter styles are really popular because the brewers want the water to shine. Like they don't want to do like one of the huge hop bombs or a big dark stout, because it's like really about showcasing the water. And these guys did an awesome job with it. I get, like, you're not in the brewing industry, but I know you've had crazy demand for your stuff, and you've shipped it all over the country and made a lot of people happy, including me. So thanks for coming on. But yeah, appreciate it so much.
Well, you said something that I want to touch upon. You said, we're making people happy. We're making you happy. Travis, that makes me happy. If you're happy, I'm happy. So
hey,
I think,
cheers.
Waterloop.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. To find all episodes, sign up for email updates, and connect on social media, visit waterloop.org.
Waterloop.